Can you guys hear me? Just let me know in the chat, just so I know that the sound is actually working. Great. We're going to get started in just a minute or two, guys. So we're going to try to wait for a couple more people. Only now we have about 9 people here currently, so hopefully to get a little bit more. If not, no big deal. We got you guys, and we're here to learn. So any actual questions so far? If not, I guess I'm going to try to steer you guys in kind of the right direction, maybe do a quick once-over of some of the material. But for the most part, remember, this is meant to be student-driven, so I'm going by the questions that you guys have maybe with the graphic organizers, or really any questions that you have with the material. So keep that in mind and start shooting in the questions, please, hopefully. Certainly would make this easier. So I'm just going to take one brief minute more while we get some more questions in here, and then we're going to get started. Alright, so the first question, we're going to get started, right? The first question that I see, and the only question so far, is just what is simply the Great Awakening? So Mr. McNabb and I, we haven't really talked about it too much yet. We're probably going to go over that quick in the first couple minutes of class tomorrow before the quiz, but I guess I can, answer that now anyway to give you a jump start on that for sure. And I'm not even really sure it's going to make that way onto the quiz, honestly. But the Great Awakening is essentially this kind of revitalization of religion. Actually, give me 1 second here. I'm going to get myself up on the screen so you can actually see me. Cool. There you go. So anyway, the Great Awakening is essentially this kind of revitalization of religion in America. If you remember specifically the Puritans and the Separatists, the Pilgrims anyway, they had come over for their religious freedom for the most part from the Anglican Church, the Church of England, right? And they were pretty strict, especially initially in that first part of colonization. And religion, was a major part of many of the aspects. If you remember, the middle colonies are going to kind of have some religious freedom as well. And they're going to be kind of a bit more religiously tolerant than what you're going to get up in the north. So anyway, the Great Awakening, during really after that big initial push, in the late 1600s, early 1700s, what's going to happen is that kind of religious component of life in America is going to kind of die down a little bit. And the Great Awakening is essentially going to be kind of this revitalization of that religious movement and religious ideology in this country, but it's going to kind of come at it's going to come at it from kind of more of an individual standpoint. It's going to challenge kind of some of the structure that had been in place of religion in the past. It's going to make it kind of more of a personal thing to your average person, and it's going to kind of bring this deep sense of kind of conviction to your average person, and kind of a standard of this personal kind of morality. It's going to kind of challenge, as I said, those kind of rituals of the religion, you know, the groups of Protestants and things like that in America. And it's going to kind of, as a part of that, it's going to kind of really kind of put some of these different groups of Protestants kind of against one another a little bit, and kind of challenging one another for kind of control in certain cases of the community. So that's kind of the Great Awakening. Can anyone think of any other questions right now? If not, I'm going to kind of probably run through a quick synopsis of some of the stuff, just to kind of refresh certain things. Obviously, I prefer questions. Questions kind of make things a lot easier. It allows me to point directly at things. But give me one moment to get something up on the screen here. Where is it? Sorry, I'm having a hard time finding what I need. Give me one more second. Okay, so I'm going to bring this over here, and you guys should be able to see momentarily. So I kind of put this SOL review together the other day, and I'm going to kind of use this as kind of the basis to kind of just reiterate and kind of go over and talk about some of the stuff that you should be kind of thinking about, right? So the Native American tribes that you should know. Yeah, so let's kind of do that. I'm going to do that kind of first, right? So let's kind of go from the beginning here a little bit while we're waiting for some more questions. So let me bring this up to full screen. So, right, let's go back to the exploration stuff, and there's going to be probably a lot more stuff from the early colonization on your quiz, but for now, let's kind of do a little bit of refresher on some of the early stuff too, because that stuff can definitely show up as well. So, reasons for exploration, right? You're going to have a couple different things. You're going to have different advances in technology, right? And the advances in technology are a big factor in allowing people to now be able to push outward and explore a lot farther. In particular, the Portuguese are going to be the big drivers of this. So this whole idea of God, gold, and glory, your triple G threat, for sure is going to also push and have other motivations, right? You're also going to get the Islamic Empire of the Ottoman Turks essentially cutting off what's known as the city of Istanbul, Constantinople at this point. They sacked Constantinople, and that is kind of the point of where Europeans would have been able to get over into Eastern Eurasia and then ultimately into Asia as far as trading goes. So when the Turks cut that off from Christians, it's going to provide motivation for these other people to push outward, right? And each of the other countries are going to have different motivations as well. So I'll get to the tribes in a second. I just kind of want to kind of go through some of the early stuff here. So as far as advances, right, some of these big advances are the rudder, which you can see here, right? The rudder is going to be big because it's going to allow them to obviously go in which direction they want the ship to go. And that's going to work together with this lateen sail, this sail down here. This lateen sail is going to be important because the triangular shape is going to allow it to capture wind from different angles. And the different angles in working with the rudder is essentially going to allow it to kind of be able to kind of steer to the side, capture the wind, and then kind of steer against the wind, and actually be able to sail against the wind, which is going to be big because you won't need the manual labor to be able to move people. And you're also going to have this astrolabe, and the astrolabe is essentially this item that allows you to be able to kind of use the stars as celestial navigation. And you can kind of pinpoint where you are on a map, latitude-wise, using this. And it's got a number of different other options and things as well. So anyway, so let's go to Portugal here for a second, right? Portugal is going to be this first kind of big exploration country, nation anyway. And their big motivations are going to be economic, right? They're going to have these trading posts and set them up all on the coast of Western Africa. They're going to be exploring Western Africa mostly first. You're going to have this Prince Henry the Navigator, so if you're working on your graphic organizer that we started in class, some of these names probably show up on there. So you have Prince Henry the Navigator, who's going to be this royal figure who's going to finance much of this exploration and technological innovation. You're going to have Bartholomew Diaz, and he is going to kind of be the first to explore all of Western Africa and end up at the southern tip of Africa, the Cape of Good Hope, which is now South Africa, the country, right? Then you're going to have Vasco da Gama, and he's going to be the first person to work his way all the way around Africa and ultimately go to India, actually, which is going to be big. So they're going to be exploring all of, of Africa, and they're going to work and basically work with these Western African nations, and they're going to actually be big players in this slave trade, which I'm circling right here, right? So let's go. They're going to kind of establish this whole idea of triangular trade once you get the discovery of the New World, which is going to be the Spanish with Columbus. But let's look at triangular trade here first, right? So the triangle can kind of go in a couple different directions. It doesn't necessarily need to be, there's really just 3 points, right? So it can be a point up here, down to Western Africa, and then over to the New World somewhere, or it can be a point. You're not going to need to know the goods specifically, Malik. Not for the quiz anyway. But anyway, you're going to, you can have that circle, that triangle anywhere, right? So typically what happens is you have the raw materials in the new colonies, in the new world, and those raw materials are going to be brought back to Europe where you're going to manufacture something, right? You're going to manufacture, so these raw materials could be sugar, tobacco, cotton, any lumber, anything, right? And then you're going to have manufactured goods, textiles. Rum is going to be a big one. It's going to be brought down to Africa where they're going to trade for slaves, and they're going to bring the slaves over to the new world. And you kind of, that triangle again goes in different directions, right? So the different motivations can end up in a couple different ways, right? So Spain, this god, gold, and glory are going to be really important too. You're going to have economic, playing a major role in the Spanish motivations for exploration and also conquest. And you're also going to get religious, right? Once they get here, they're going to see these natives as people that need to be fixed. And you're going to have this whole idea of mission work and missionaries. Okay, and then lastly, legacy, right? So many of the conquistadors are looking at one another and kind of seeing the fame and the prestige that some have for what they've done, so that's going to inspire them to kind of go out and do similar stuff themselves. So Spanish, right? Obviously Columbus. Columbus is pretty simple. I hope you guys know who Columbus is, obviously, at this point. But his discovery, right, in quotes, is going to be this kind of opening the door for further exploration of the New World by the Spanish as well as other European countries from the Old World, right? And remember, Columbus was not the first European in the New World. Sorry, my picture's cutting off the bottom there. But Leif Erikson and the Vikings had gotten there almost 500 years earlier. So, yep, he opens this up now, and this kind of was forgotten or not realized that it even happened with Leif Erikson and the Vikings, but this is going to now open the door, right? And it's going to open the door for this Columbian Exchange, and as Malik was saying, these goods that are going to kind of be traded between the different areas of the world. I'm just going to open up population flow. It's going to open up flows of goods, other explorers. So real quickly, you're not going to necessarily need to know them on this quiz, but let's talk about them real briefly. Magellan, Ferdinand Magellan is going to be the first one to go all the way around the world. Although he dies in the Philippines, it's just his expedition that makes it. You're going to also have Vasco Nunez de Balboa. He's going to become the governor of Panama, and he's going to be the first person to go across the Isthmus of Panama down where Central America connects to South America. And then you're going to have Ponce de Leon. Ponce de Leon is Florida. He goes around Florida basically looking for what's called, this alleged story anyway, that he's searching for the Fountain of Youth, right? So the Columbian Exchange, these goods, we can sit here and name them all, but you guys should know them more or less at this point, and here's the list so you can take a look at that real quick. But the big stuff, right, from Old World to New World, certain crops for sure, wheat, rice, some fruits, right? You're going to have livestock coming over that didn't exist in the new world, right? In North America and South America, you didn't have pigs, cows, chickens. Horses are going to become huge, since horses, so much so fuel so much of the development of things everywhere at this point in time. Coming back from the New World to the Old World, just a lot of crops, and these crops are going to play a big role in help feeding the poor and peasants in Europe. Tomatoes, potatoes, sweet potato, squash, and disease, actually, believe it or not, syphilis comes from the New World, right? So Central American cultures, if there's two on here that you should know, Central and South American cultures, the Aztecs, right? They're this big civilization, pretty advanced too, that lives in Mexico, right? They have this capital Tenochtitlan, and they're going to be captured and conquered by the conquistador Hernan Cortez of the Spanish, right? The Incas are the largest empire in the Americas before the European contact, and they exist in South America, really in modern-day Chile and Peru. Their capital is Cuzco, and they had adapted to this life in the high Andes Mountains. And they're going to be captured and conquered by Francisco Pizarro. And remember, right, the diseases that are coming from the old world to the new world are going to be responsible for wiping out a large number of the native population, for estimates as high as 99% or so of the Native American population before you get the next wave of people coming over to the new world, really right around the turn of the 1600s or so. Late 1500s is when you get the first European settlement and permanent colony at St. Augustine, Florida, before you get the first permanent English colony, right? So the Spanish, their culture is going to spread out, right? Let's keep it simple. Culture is going to spread from their conquests in Central America and South America. You're going to get a mixing of cultures. You're going to get this mestizos, this mixed blood, essentially. This mixed blood for sure. And this mixed blood is going to play, a major role. These people are going to be kind of less than these people that are born in Spain, right? The Peninsulares and the Creoles, who were people that were born in the New World of Spanish parents. You can kind of see the pyramid here. And then lastly, you're going to have the encomienda system. And the encomienda system is this idea that it's the idea that the Spaniards are going to be responsible for taking charge of the Native Americans, right? And basically making them better, and by giving them religion and giving them work and things like that. And ultimately, what's going to happen is that you basically have this turning into kind of a group of slavery. So anyway, getting back onto here. So basically, you're then going to have France. France is going to become the next big player here, right? You're going to have some exploration going on between them, right? And they're going to explore down into the St. Lawrence River. I can show you a map here in a second, I hope. I think I have one in the next slide or two. And the St. Lawrence River goes down into the interior of Canada, and this is going to become a big fur trade. And that's really big fur trade, people. The population is going to remain pretty sparse. You can see the map right here. I can zoom in. Oops, no, I can't zoom in here. But you can zoom in there a little bit, right? So I can't move my mouse, otherwise this picture is going to get smaller. But you can see where Montreal is on the map. And that's kind of where they worked their way down through Canada and ultimately down the Mississippi into the Great Lakes area, Mississippi River, and they're going to be mostly fur trade. They're going to have good relationships with the Native Americans. Okay, so let's keep going. We didn't really talk about them so much, but think about the Dutch. Holland is the country, right? The Dutch are the Netherlands. You can see their flag there up on the top right. The pink is where essentially this is going to become their main area. They're going to set up trading posts. They have this big Dutch East India Trading Company that's going to be this huge vital piece of this time period as far as movements of peoples and corporation and things like that. So it's going to be explored by Henry Hudson up the Hudson River, right? And they explore and kind of take control of the modern New York metropolitan area. At the time, New York was called New Amsterdam. Okay? So, anyway, moving on here. So this, I don't know why this is small the way it is, but basically you have England now comes into play, right? And now we're going to spend the rest of the time talking about the English colonies for the rest of the way, right? So their opportunity is going to be economic opportunity, right? You have cash crops for big starters. The big ones that they're going to find in the South initially are your what they're going to bring over, right? Tobacco, rice, and indigo. Indigo being dye. Dye being, what you color your clothes with, right? Indigos being of this blue dye. They're also going to look for religious freedom. This slide got mixed up for some reason, or jumbled up for some, but anyway, you got the two pictures there: religious freedom and your cash crops, right? So your first British colony, the first attempt is Roanoke in North Carolina. You can see the map down here on the right, and that is essentially it flounders, right? You have this company that sets up this venture. People are trying to make money and hoping to make money, and essentially it flounders. It doesn't work. You get people that ultimately they don't know what happens to them. It's just kind of this big mystery, and no one's really 100% sure of what's going on to them. I don't know what's going on with the feed here. It's getting the quality is getting a little crummy there for a second. Anyway, so Jamestown is the next big one. This is the first permanent English colony in 1607, right? It's founded and brought by the Virginia Company of London, which is this joint stock company. A joint stock company quickly is simply just having, it's a company, right? People pay in and invest, and they hire workers, essentially, and they hire workers, and they bring them to the New World. They send them to the New World to essentially find resources and bring those resources back to the Old World, to Europe, to make money. Going on, right? So Jamestown, there are issues that it faces first, and the big idea, right, the big in bold there is this starving time, and that the workers were originally there to get rich and not work first. Yes, Malik, that is exactly the same as a joint stock company. That is a joint stock company for sure. So the issues that they face in Jamestown, right, you have the workers, right, they're trying to get rich. They're not going to be there for very long. That's what they're thinking, right? So when they get there, they're looking for this gold, and they're not getting ready, and they don't have the hindsight that they might be there for a long time. So when the winter comes, you get what's called the starving time. The starving time is this time period where the colony's not doing particularly great. They don't necessarily have a lot of food, and ultimately this man, John Smith, right, he's going to become this leader figure in the colony for a little bit, and he's going to introduce this idea and this need to work for food, and that's going to be kind of really important. And this kind of this thought and this rule is going to essentially allow enough time to be able to go by, and you're talking about 100 and something. I think it's 130 initial people in this company that are at least in the new colony, and you're talking 30 or 40 of them are left. After this rough couple patches before John Rolfe gets there. It's not pretty for them. You actually get cannibalism. You get people eating all sorts of rats and dogs and cats and things like that, whatever they can get their hands on, until you get to John Rolfe. John Rolfe comes to the colony, and when he comes to the colony with this kind of resupply ship, he brings tobacco, and tobacco is going to be this new cash crop that's going to really bring Virginia now out of this kind of tough patch to allow them to be profitable, and then ultimately to expand. You're going to start to get this influx of more resources and more people being brought to the colony to allow them to actually to keep working and keep working well, right? So once they expand to the point of needing it, the expansion is going to lead to needing government, right? And you're going to get this what's called this House of Burgesses, which is the first elected assembly in the New World. So you have elected representatives to this House of Burgesses, where they're going to kind of make laws, and they're going to make laws that help encourage growth. And the modern day Virginia Assembly can trace their line all the way back to this House of Burgesses, right? So keep that in mind as well, and that could be an SOL question eventually. So eventually, you're going to also have issues with the Native Americans. You're going to have issues with the Native Americans, right? So those issues happen, and ultimately, you're going to have an instance where you have this massacre along the James River, which is the river that Jamestown is on, and as a result, the king's going to kind of revoke this charter that he had given the company, and is going to make it basically what's called a royal colony in 1624. So ultimately, when the king takes charge as the royal colony, you also had the English Civil War going on. And the English Civil War was essentially this major time of strife in England, obviously. But when the king had won, he basically rewarded people that were loyal to him. And when they were loyal to him, he gave them land in the New World, in particular in this colony. And these people are known as Cavaliers, right? Again, another Virginia word right there. These people were, loyal to the king. They were loyal to the king, and sorry, I'm just kind of responding there in the chat for a second. Anyway, so they were loyal to the king, and they're basically getting this land from the king for their loyalty. So you're also going to get this instance where Africans are introduced into Virginia, and this is kind of gray area. We're not 100% sure what these Africans were. They were given to the English by the Dutch, and we think they could have been we call them indentured servants. They, were sold. So it's kind of one of those weird situations that we're not really quite sure if they were slaves or if they were indentured servants, but we lean more toward indentured servants because some of these people actually became major players in, well, not major players, but players in Virginia as free players. So if they became free afterwards, then we think they might not have been slaves. Anyway, I'm kind of going on a tangent here. So let's keep rolling. So the Africans are going to be introduced by the Dutch, and ultimately you're going to get more and more of a demand for this labor because of these large plantations that crop up. And these plantations are going to basically be majorly... Sorry, yes, Alex, they did. So the Western African nations, they did, yeah. Many times they basically would raid the interior of the continent and ultimately bring them out to the western side of Africa, right? And they would sell them to the Europeans for those manufactured goods we were talking about earlier, right? So anyway, that demand for labor on these large plantations, right? If you have thousands of acres that need to be cultivated, it's going to be hard to find people for that, and that's why slavery becomes so lucrative and so important for this area. It's going to really rely on this to work in the way that it does. So ultimately, you're going to have these indentured servants as well. People are going to pay for people to make their way to the New World, right? And the indentured servants are essentially going to be, it's paying your way, and then you're going to basically work for 4 to 7 years are typically the terms. And once you've paid your debt to these people that get you over there, then ultimately you have your freedom, right, and do what you want in the New World. And a lot of these times, these people, once their indentured servitude was over, they would head west, where there still was land in the Shenandoah Valley, and then Western Virginia as well, off of the coast where people had been for a while now, so they were a lot more dense, right? You're also going to have these artisans with small self-sufficient farmers, and then this headright system. Headright system is basically giving people land for the amount of people that they bring, right? So anyway, I'm going to keep rolling here. So we get the religious aspect in the north, right? So real quickly, we're almost done with this little PowerPoint here, and I have one more quick one for the next half, and we'll keep rolling. So your religious freedom in the north is going to be the big reason for motivation, right? I'm sorry, my cuts off the colony, the map anywhere. On the bottom, I can kind of close so you can see it. Let me do that for a second. So anyway, you now have the Puritans and the Pilgrims, and I kind of lost Pilgrims. They are getting religiously persecuted, right? You have the Anglican Church in England, and the Anglican Church is essentially the Church of England, and they want people to worship the way they want them to worship, and not how the other people want to worship. So these new people, they wanted to worship how they did, and they wanted to leave as a result. So they left. And they head to the Netherlands first, but then they end up in the New World. And you're going to get them landing in Massachusetts at Plymouth, where they establish this colony. Before they actually get onto the rules, you get this Mayflower Compact, which is basically these settlers agree to rules and regulations of the colony. It's going to be kind of your first direct democracy of the time period. Okay? You need this first kind of direct democracy, as I said. So anyway, so the Massachusetts Bay, the Puritans come next. They follow the Pilgrims, and they want to worship as freely too, so they want to avoid persecution by the Church of England, and they're going to be led by this man named John Winthrop, who is going to be the governor of the Massachusetts Bay Colony. They're going to establish this covenant community based around their religious principles. They're going to be intolerant of other religious ideas, and they're going to kind of keep practicing this direct democracy through their town meetings, right? So I think this is the last one in this one, so I'm going to open up one more, and we're going to finish that up real quick, and then we'll let you guys be on your way unless you have any more questions. So let me do that quick. Right, so as we were just talking about those religious communities in New England, right? They are these small, tight-knit communities, and their communities are based off of their religious beliefs, right? These covenant communities. You know, the Puritans, as we just said, the John Winthrop is their governor of Massachusetts Bay Colony, and the idea is that they're going to establish this city upon a hill that he talks about in a sermon, and be this Christian example to the world, the direct democracy to the town hall meeting that we kind of just mentioned, right? So ultimately, as we said, that they're going to kind of not like other people worshiping how they want, right? It's funny because they're kind of being hypocrites, where they wanted their own religious freedom, but they didn't want people in the New World practicing differently than them. So when you have two people, specifically this man named Roger Williams, who's going to become exiled for spreading, and quotes here, which is directly out of their language, new and dangerous ideas, and he's going to be exiled from the colony for, again, wanting to worship how he wants to worship, and calling into question how the Puritans were, and he goes and founds the city, or the town of Providence, Rhode Island, which is going to become the capital. So you also have Anne Hutchinson, who's going to disrupt the colony as well, and she's going to disrupt the colony, as Mr. McNabb was talking about, how she basically ran a Bible study group in her house, and this didn't go over well. The Puritans didn't like that too much, and she's also exiled, and she founds of Portsmouth. So ultimately, these are going to combine to make Rhode Island and Providence Plantations, which is the official name of the colony and then state. Okay, so as far as the economics of these guys go, right, they're going to be based on small-scale subsistence farming. The land is not very super fertile up north. So the farming ends up being small scale. You can't have these big plantations like down in the south, but ultimately fishing and whaling are going to be seriously important to the area. I remember much of this is on the coast. You're going to have shipbuilding and logging is going to be used to kind of send these over to the New World, but also in the shipbuilding industry. And right, these Puritans are extreme workers. They have a really, really good hard work ethic, and this work ethic is going to really push their enterprise in the North. Okay, so let's go to the middle colonies here, right? So socially, right, it's a lot more religious groups. It's not this kind of homogenous religious culture. The fishing and whaling was pretty important to the North, Max. And I'll get to your question, Sean Yang, in a second here. So anyway, so socially, right in the middle colonies, you're going to have different religious groups, and there's going to be a lot more religious tolerance in the middle colonies. You're going to have the Quakers in Pennsylvania. The Quakers in particular are going to... They're going to be led by this man named William Penn, which we talked about in class either yesterday, or I guess Friday or today, and they're going to kind of believe this idea that all people are equal in the eyes of God, and as a result of that, they're going to also escape England for religious persecution because of that, right? The nobles don't like the idea that everyone being equal, this whole divine right thing, gets in the way of that. You're going to have these Huguenots, which are French Protestants in Pennsylvania and in that area as well. You're going to have the Jews working their way into New York, where there's going to be a large population still today. So you're going to have Presbyterians in New Jersey as well. It's going to be much more of a flexible social structure. This is my updated complicated one. I kind of did a lot more work on this one. Bummer, that's on my other computer. So anyway, let's just talk about the South real briefly, and then we'll be on our way here, unless you guys have any more specific questions. So the South, right, are going to be largely agriculturally based. They are agriculturally based off the cash crops that you have, right? The cash crops being big ones being tobacco, rice, and indigo initially, until you get the rise of cotton being this major cash crop. Once you get the cotton gin being invented by Eli Whitney, make it a lot easier to pick the threads of the cotton off of the plant. So that's going to be the big ones, right? Let's talk about the different groups of each, I guess, colony, right? So the northern colonies, let me bring up a map here on Google here. So let's look at the maps, right? So these are all the states right now. Maybe I'll bring up, let me do this better. Let's do better. Colonial map. Here we go. This is a good picture. Okay, so we have our 13 colonies here, right? Your 13 original colonies. Maine is actually not a state yet, or colony yet. It's actually made part of Massachusetts. So from the north, the northern colonies, right? New England colonies. You're going to have Maine, or not Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Connecticut, and Rhode Island are going to be them, right? You're also going to then have the middle colonies are going to be New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Delaware are going to be your middle colonies, and your southern colonies are going to be Maryland, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia. If I were you, I would look at these because they could help you. There could be some bonus questions or something, possibly. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe not. So, any other questions? So let me look at just a couple, see if there's any last ones quick. So fishing and whaling is important. So there's a lot more interaction between classes in the middle colonies. That's kind of what I meant by that one. So that there was a lot more flexibility, in the different classes meeting each other and working with one another, because it's basically mostly enterprise. It's business related and business oriented, right? So they want to be able to do business with whoever they can. So there's going to be some mixing there for sure between the classes in the middle colonies. Okay, any last questions before we end this for now? I think that was a good general overview. I think it'd be a good idea to look through your notes and look through other stuff too. But for, I think, 40 minutes or 35 minutes, whatever the heck it's been, I think we did a good job of covering, kind of running through pretty much a lot of it anyway. The main nitty-gritty anyway. Why did who not have the same views? Malik. Sorry, you guys are technically a little bit behind me, so. Why didn't all have the same views? Just different situations, right? Mostly in the north is mostly religious, right? You're gonna have different religious groups coming into the middle colonies. Like why some were there for religion and others for money. It's all happening over a long period of time, right? Initially people come over for money. The whole company idea in Virginia, in particular, the joint stock company. The religious aspect. Don't get me wrong. Some of those religious people are looking to make money as well. And they become pretty wealthy. And some of these families, in America, that go back all the way to those times are typically pretty wealthy people. So. I think it just happens over a long period of time. It's a lot of different groups of people, and same just like today, everyone is trying to do their own thing, and so do they use capitalism? Essentially, the system that we were talking about in class was this mercantilism idea. Mercantilism being originally, right, this raw materials being brought over to the main country anyway, main nation, to be able to be brought and turned uh, into manufactured goods, right? That's the whole point of having colonies, if you can take their resources, essentially. But yes, capitalism, right? If you make something and you sell it, and you can build enterprise and business, right? And you compete against one another as a result of it, yeah, I mean, they're essentially using capitalism for sure. Okay, any last questions? Otherwise, I'm going to kind of call it a night, and I will see you guys tomorrow, and some of you guys on Wednesday. I would say for sure the quiz is going to kind of focus probably more on the colonies and the English regions. For sure, I would agree. As far as like distinct Native American tribes, I don't believe you really need to be super distinct and super. I'd focus a lot more on the colony stuff. For sure, if you're going to focus on one thing, the different regions and the early colonization and stuff. Okay, what's your question? The colonies have a defense force is what I'm seeing right now. The colonies, they, on some level, they did, because you're going to get the evolution of this whole idea of a militia, right? So I would say, you know, that's kind of be your defense force, and they're going to defend themselves against the British eventually, and you're going to have militias, right? So let me bring up the one map quick, if I can try to, do I still have it here? Let me bring it up. See if I can. This one will work, I suppose. So look at this map, right? You got the British colonies over here, and you got some Britain up in north in Canada as well. But you have New France, right? So as England starts to expand westward, right, over to the Appalachian Mountains and then into the Appalachian Mountains and over them eventually, you're going to have the French that had kind of come down in this arcing motion right here, down into the Louisiana territory, and they're going to start working their way east too, and they're going to kind of meet, and that's why you're going to get the first big conflict between these people, and you're going to have people that are fighting them. So you do have some sort of defense force. You have forts that pop up all along this border to protect themselves from it as well. So I hope that answers your question. Hi, Steph. How are you? I don't know why the feed here is like potato quality, at least for me. Hopefully it's better for you guys. Anyway, okay, we're going to leave it at that. So unless I see another question here in the next 10 seconds, I am calling it a night. So I hope you guys have a good night, and I will see you again tomorrow or Wednesday. Night, guys.